Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and squirrels from around the world. Yes, I am back and I am having fun. So, for those of you that don't know, I will be doing a show Sunday evening, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the one and only GOAT, or better yet, known as Valhalla Awaits. So you'll have to come check that out whenever it comes up. I'm going to pop these headphones off because there isn't a whole lot of need for them tonight. I am chilling out, having a few drinks, reading the Federalist Papers, knowing that we've got 4th of July coming up next week. And it's going to be a good 4th of July. It's going to be a really good 4th of July. I hope everybody has a good time. That's what we want. We want everybody to have an absolute good time on the 4th of July, and don't hurt yourself by blowing off your fingers or some crap like that. Hey, Rabbit, how you doing? Yeah, this is spur of the moment. I figured I would do some Federalist Papers, try to get through a couple of them tonight. I'm gonna probably finish this thing off at 9 o'clock tonight. Gonna cut it a little bit short. I don't want to have it going too long tonight. You understand? Well, thank you, Rabbit. I will pop that thing up there as soon as I can figure out how to get this damn thing to work. There we go. Doggone it. Why does it always keep doing that? Booger. There we go. Pin message. There you go. Hey, Squaw Bob. It's going to be a 2 + 2 4th. I like that. Yes, it will be. It will be a 2 + 2 4th. No, I'm actually looking forward to this 4th of July. It was really interesting while in Spain. I had a conversation with the guy that owned the property, owned the place where we lived, and he said something that really impressed me. As an Italian, someone from another country, another place, another viewpoint, not able to say things in really good English. I mean, his daughter and sons were much better in their English. Their favorite band, believe it or not, was 50 Cent. No joke. Italians. I'm just picturing these little lily white kids just loving 50 Cent. That was their favorite music, and I found it endearing that American music and their English was much better than my Italian. But anyhow, he had said something that really resonated, with me very well. Was him saying, "Hey, what the flock? How you doing? Hey, yo." I see you over there on Rumble. I'll be alone with my kids are going on vacation. Oh, sorry to hear that. Well, 4th of July, I may do a special stream. We'll see what goes on. And you're welcome to come hang out with me. I had, but get back to my story. So I'm talking with this guy, and one thing that he said was, without America, Italians wouldn't be where they are today. Had nothing to do. Hey, Caitlin, how you doing? How you doing? Good to see you. That Americans wouldn't really change the course of Italy because they showed what was possible with their constitution, with their willingness to buck the system. He was quite impressed with it, and I just it really put put to put to heart how much America has affected the world, um, sometimes in bad ways, but um, with the Constitution, that it gave it became a shining beacon for the rest of the country, and it was immeasurable the amount of pride that he had in his country, the love that he had for the United States. Um, and it was not a political statement coming from him. He didn't view it as being political. He just viewed it as from one country to another, that olive branch. Olive branch, yeah, lots of olive branches in Italy. That olive branch reaching out, and just how much the United States has, as a people, has taken for granted the freedoms that we've been offered, um, to each other, not something that our government gave us, but what we gave each other. And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy doing these Federalist Papers, is because it wasn't the Federalist Papers that changed the course of history. It was the Constitution. It was the ratification. That's what the Federalist Papers are all about, was to ratify the Constitution, to solidify it, to make it highly acceptable, and the reason for everybody, all of the states, coming together and unifying to become the United States. Something that I think the European Union is trying to do, but it ends up being more of a power play than actually unifying Europe. So anyhow, I guess enough opining on that. But knowing that we do have 4th of July coming up, it just makes you feel pretty good about our country. Being patriotic doesn't mean that you have to agree with one party or the other, and that's not what patriotic is being about. This division that we've been seeing in the United States between black and white and Hispanic and political parties, left, right, it doesn't do good, to have absolute hatred or disdain for the other party, but being able to understand where they're coming from, and that we're all in this together, and trying to find a little bit of common ground is what's going to push us forward. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really, the Federalist Papers sort of resonated, because there's things in there that talk about the fall of Rome, and I mean, shit, I was in Rome, and one of the questions, because I never really followed too much on Italian history, Roman history, or any of that. I asked my wife, I was like, so how did a great beacon, this great city, go to this point where it's in absolute ruins, and now it's revered and looked at, and her wonderful knowledge was, well, they just looked for something new and shiny, and just sort of let this area, which you had the Forum, you had the Colosseum, that just fell out of disrepair. Nobody really cared about it anymore. They were looking for something new, bright, shiny. Whether that's what caused all of it to just fall into disrepair, but you would think that this vast area, just nobody cared about it anymore. Nobody had any interest. Times changed, and so much was lost in the middle of, in the middle of this great city. It's great to see the architecture, but try to imagine, some place like New York City that's been a beacon for many people to come in and see the Statue of Liberty, to actually go past that statue. My grandfather, as a young child, sailed under the Statue of Liberty, actually stepped foot on Ellis Isle before they, transported him off to another place with his family. And to see, just imagine someplace like New York, because it has gone the way of the dodo, that it just, all those high rises, all of the people living there just pack up and leave, and watch it just fall into disrepair. It becomes overgrown, things collapse, parts of it get pulled out and used elsewhere, and to lose all of the culture, all of the idea that was there in New York City. How drastic that would be in, a couple thousand years, that it just, now it ends up becoming a place that people visit to look and see. So anyhow, I guess I should stop opining on that and get into this one. So here we go. So, consequences of hostilities between the states. Probably a good important one seen this day and age. Assuming it therefore as an established truth that the several states, in case of disunion, or such combinations of them as might happen to be formed out of the wreck of the general confederacy, would be subject to those vicissitudes of peace and war, of friendship and enemy, and anyhow, with each other, which have fallen to the lot of all neighboring nations not united under one government, let us enter into a concise detail of some of the consequences that would attend such a situation. That's a harsh thought. And this is before, you have to understand that all of this being written is before the Civil War. So you've got him, Alexander Hamilton, talking about this years before Civil War, before that ever even comes about. It's being talked about. That's a deep thought. Think about that for a second, that he's talking about how this should be dissuaded, and here we go. Not even a decade later, we're at war with each other. Let me continue on. War between the states. Damn it. I hate that crap. Damn phone sending me messages. You guys stop sending me dirty pictures. I hate that. War between the states in the first period of their separate existence would be accompanied by a much greater distress than it commonly in those countries where regular military establishments have long obtained. The disciplined armies always kept on the foot of the continent of Europe, though they bear a malignant aspect, liberty and economy have notwithstanding been productive of the single advantage of rendering such consequences impracticable, and of preventing that rapid desolation which used to mark the progress of war prior to their introduction. The art of fortification has contributed to the same ends. The nations of Europe are encircled with chains of fortified places, which mutually obstruct invasions. Campaigns are wasted in reducing 2 or 3 frontier garrisons to gain admittance into an enemy's country. Similar impediments occur at every step to exhaust the strength and delay the progress of an invader. Formerly, an invading army would penetrate into the heart of a neighboring country almost as soon as intelligence of its approach could be received. But now, a comparatively small force of disciplined troops acting on the defensive with the aid of posts is able to impede and finally to frustrate the enterprises of one much more considerable. The history of war in that quarter of the globe is no longer a history of nations subdued and empires overturned, but of towns taken and retaken, of battles that decide nothing, of retreats more beneficial than victories, of much effort and little acquisition. Hard thought right there. In this country, the scene would altogether reversed. The jealousy of military establishments would postpone them as long as possible. The want of fortifications leaving the frontiers of one state open to another would facilitate inroads. The populous states would, with little difficulty, overrun their less populous neighbors. Conquest would be as easy to be made as difficult to be retained. War, therefore, would be desultory and predatory. Plunder and devastation ever march in the train of irregulars. The calamities of individuals would make the principal figure in the events which would characterize our military exploits. This picture is not too highly wrought, though. I confess I would not long remain a just one. Safety from external danger is the most powerful director of national conduct. Even the adherent love of liberty will, after a time, give way to its dictates. The violent destruction of life and property incident to war, the continual effort and alarm attendant on a state of continual danger, will compel nations, the most attached to liberty, to resort for response and security to institutions which have a tendency to destroy their civil and political rights. To be more safe, they, at length, becoming willing to run the risk of being less free. The institutions chiefly alluded to are standing armies and the correspondent appendages of military establishments. Standing armies, it is said, are not provided against in the new Constitution, and it is therefore inferred that they may exist under it. Their existence, however, from the very terms of the proposition, is at most problematical, and uncertain. But standing armies, it may be replied, must inevitably result from a dissolution of the Confederacy. Frequent war and constant apprehension, which require a state of as constant preparation, will infallibly produce them. The weaker states or confederacies would have recourse to them. to put themselves upon an equality with their more potent neighbors. They would endeavor to supply the inferiority of population and resources by a more regular and effective system of defense, by disciplined troops and by fortifications. They would, at the same time, be necessitated to strengthen the executive arm of government, in doing which their constitutions would require a progressive direction towards monarchy. It is the nature of war to increase the executive at the expense of the legislative authority. The expedients which have been mentioned would soon give the states or confederacies that made use of them a superiority over their neighbors. Small states or states of less natural strength under vigorous governments and with the assistance of disciplined armies have often triumphed over larger states or states of greater national strength which have been destitute of these advantages. Neither the pride nor the safety of the more important states or confederacies would permit them long to submit to this mortifying and advantageous superiority. They would quickly resort to means similar to those by which it had been effected to reinstate themselves in their lost preeminence. We had a confederacy that had a superior army and generals, but got crushed by technological superiority. True. Thus, we should in a little time see established in every part of this country the same engines of despotism which have been the scourge of the old world. This at least would be the natural course of things, and our reasonings would be the more likely to be just in proportion as they are accommodated to this standard. These are not vague inferences drawn from supposed or speculative defects in a constitution, the whole power of which is lodged in the hands of a people or their representatives and delegates, but they are solid conclusions drawn from the natural and necessary progress of human affairs. Well, sounds very, very much like a premonition here. Wow. It may perhaps be asked by way of objection to this, why did not standing armies spring up out of the contentions which so often distracted the ancient republics of Greece? Different answers, equally satisfactory, may be given to this question. The industrious habits of the people of the present day, absorbed in the pursuits of gain and devoted to the improvements of agriculture and commerce, are incompatible with the conditions of a nation of soldiers, which was the true condition of the people of those republics. The means of revenue which have been so greatly multiplied by the increase of gold and silver and of the arts of industry and the science of finance, which is the offspring of modern times, concurring with the habits of nations, have produced an entire revolution in the system of war and have rendered disciplined armies distinct from the body of the citizens, the inseparable companions of frequent hostility. There is a wide difference also between military establishments and a country seldom exposed by its situation to internal invasions, and in one of which is often subject to them and always apprehensive of them. The rulers of the former can have a good pretext if they are even so inclined to keep on foot armies so numerous as must of necessity be maintained, or the latter These armies, in the first case, rarely, if at all, called into activity for interior defense. The people are in no danger of being broken to military subordination. The laws are not accustomed to relaxations in favor of military exigencies. The civil state remains in full vigor, neither corrupted nor confounded with the principles or propensities of the other state. The smallness of the army renders the natural strength of the community an overmatch for it, and the citizens, not habituated to look up to military power for protection or to submit to its oppressions. And that's very important what they're talking about there. The smallness of the army renders the natural strength of the community an overmatch for it, and the citizens not habituated to look up to military for power or protection or to submit to its oppressions, neither love nor fear the soldiery. They view them with a spirit of jealous acquiescence in a necessary evil and stand ready to resist a power which they suppose may be exerted to the prejudice of their rights. The army under such circumstances may usefully aid the magistrate to suppress a small faction or an occasional mob or insurrection, but it will be unable to enforce encroachments against the united efforts of the great body of people. Great body of the people. So what he's talking about here is the army shouldn't be so great that we fear our army, but more that we're jealous of the power that they have, but also knowing that the army isn't going to come after its citizens. The army isn't going to be used against them. What he's preaching is one of the most reasonable thoughts that people like Biden have forgotten, that we don't work for the government. We don't work for the army. The army is subservient to us. Our army, our navy, they should not be more powerful than its citizens. Over time, that has flipped drastically. In a country in the predicament last described, the contrary of all this happens. The perpetual menacings of danger oblige the government to always prepare to repel its armies must be numerous enough for instant defense. The continual necessity for their services enhances the importance of the soldier, and the proportionality degrades the condition of the citizen. The military state becomes elevated above the civil. The inhabitants of territories, often the theater of war, are unavoidably subjected to frequent infringements on their rights, which serve to weaken their sense of those rights. And by degrees, the people are brought to consider the soldiery not only as their protectors, but as their superiors. The transition from this disposition to that of considering them masters is neither remote nor difficult, but it is very difficult to prevail upon the people under such impressions to make a bold or effectual resistance to usurpation. Usurpers supported by the military power. So he's already talking about whenever a military becomes too strong and it goes closer towards the military than it does towards the civil, it becomes proportionably why a lot of people do not like the police, I guess is the best description. The kingdom of Great Britain falls within this first description, an insular situation and a powerful marine guarding in its great measure against the possibility of foreign invasion supersede the necessity of a numerous army within the kingdom. A sufficient force to make head against such descent till the militia could have time to rally and embody is all that it has been deemed requisite. No motive of national policy has demanded, nor would public opinion have tolerated a larger number of troops upon its domestic establishment. There has been, for the long past time, little room for the operation of other causes which have been enumerated as the consequences of internal war. This peculiar felicity of situation has, in a great degree, contributed to preserve the liberty which that country to this day enjoys, in spite of the prevalent venality and corruption. If, on the contrary, Britain had been situated on the continent and had been compelled, as she would have been by that situation, to make her military establishments at home coextensive with those of the other great powers of Europe, she, like them, would in all probability be at this day a victim to the absolute power of a single man. It is possible, though not easy, that the people of that island may be enslaved from other causes, but it cannot be by the prowess of an army so inconsiderable as that which has been usually kept up within the kingdom. Hey, Daisy girl, good to see you. Glad you came by. This is not going to be a long one tonight, so I won't keep all of you here forever. I promise. Moving on. If we are wise enough to preserve the Union, we may for ages enjoy an advantage similar to that of an insulated situation. Europe is a great distance from us. Our colonies in our vicinity will likely to continue too much disproportioned in strength to be able to give us any dangerous annoyance. Extensive military establishments cannot, in this position, be necessary to our security. But if we should be disunited, and the integral parts should either remain separated or, which is most probable, should be thrown together in 2 or 3 confederacies, we should be, in short course of time, in the predicament of the continental powers of Europe. Our liberties would be a prey to the means of defending ourselves against ambition and jealousy of each other. This is an idea not superficial or futile, but solid and weighty. It deserves the most serious and mature considerations of every prudent and honest man of whatever party, if such men will make a firm and solemn pause and meditate dispassionately on the importance of this interesting idea, if they will contemplate it in all its attitudes and trace it to its consequences, they will not hesitate to part with trivial objections to a constitution, the rejection of which would in all probability put a final period to the Union. The airy phantoms that flit before the distempered imaginations of some of its adversaries would quickly give place to the more substantial forms of dangers, real, certain, and formidable. Sorry, Rabbit. I didn't mean to yawn. I am actually quite tired. It was a long day and very hot. I had a lot of outdoor things that needed to be done, and when it's 92 at 11 o'clock in the morning, it's and like 90% humidity, it takes a lot out of you. I wasn't planning on doing a long stream tonight, but I do have one more of these that I want to dig into. And it has to do with Federalist number 9. The last one was 8, of course, because that comes before 9. But I think this one is a very important one. I don't think it's a very long one either, if I'm not mistaken. This is one of the... Nope, I'm wrong. It is a little long, but I will read through it quite quickly, if you don't mind. I'm joking. I'm working in the barn. It's 96 currently. Oh, yeah. That was me today on the roof, sealing up gutters and then mowing the lawn, blowing things off, and just general cleanup to have it like downpour after I got all finished. So the rain was a blessed thing today. It did cool it off a little bit. But yeah, tomorrow I will be probably do a release on some of my Venice picks. And then of course I've got Valhalla that's going to be on Sunday at 9:30. I sent him a message earlier and he was totally up for it. We're going to be talking goats. And just having a good time, probably sitting back, drinking a few, just, shooting the shit like we do. But it'll be fun. It'll be fun. The utility of the Union as a safeguard against domestic faction and insurrection. And so this was another one written by Alexander Hamilton to the people of the state of New York. A firm union will be of the utmost moment to the peace and liberty of the states as a barrier against domestic faction and insurrection. It is impossible to read the history of the petty republics of Greece and of Italy, which I was just there, without feeling sensations of horror and disgust at the distractions with which they were continually agitated in the rapid succession of revolutions by which they were kept in a state of perpetual vibration between the extremes of tyranny and anarchy. If they exhibit occasional calms, these will only serve as short-lived contrast to the furious storms that are to succeed, if now and then intervals of felicity open to view, we behold them with a mixture of regret arising from the reflections that the pleasing scenes before us are soon to be overwhelmed by the tempestuous waves of sedition and party rage. If momentary rays of glory bleak forth from the gloom while they dazzle us with the transient and fleeting brilliancy that they have at the same time to admonish us to lament that the vices of government should pervert the direction and tarnish the luster of those bright talents and exalted endowments for which the favored soils that produce them have been so justly celebrated. From the disorders that disfigure the annals of those republics, the advocates of despotism have drawn arguments not only against the forms of republican government, but against the very principles of civil liberty. They have decried all free government as inconsistent with the orders of society, and have indulged themselves in malicious exultations over its friends and partisans. Happily for mankind, stupendous fabrics reared on the basis of liberty, which have flourished for ages, have, in a few glorious instances, refuted their gloomy sophisms. think that's right. And I trust America will be the broad and solid foundation of other edifices not less magnificent, which will be equally permanent monuments of their errors, but is not to be denied that the portraits they have sketched of Republican government were two just copies of the originals from which they were taken. If it had been found impracticable to have divisive models of a more perfect structure, the enlightened friends to liberty would have been obliged to abandon the cause of that species of government as indefensible. The science of politics, however, like most other sciences, has received great improvement. The efficacy of various principles is now well understood, which were either not known at all or imperfectly known to the ancients. The regular distribution of power into distinct departments, the introduction of legislative balances and checks, the institution of courts composed of judges holding their offices during good behavior, the representation of the people in the legislature by deputies of their own election. These are wholly new discoveries, or have made their principal progress towards perfection in modern times. They are means, and powerful means, by which the excellences of Republican government may be retained and its perfections lessened and avoided. Or avoided, sorry. That's a good topic. Yes, it is. To this catalog of circumstances that tend to the amelioration of popular systems of civil government, I shall venture, however novel it may appear to some, to add one more, on a principle which has been made the foundation of an objection to the new Constitution. I mean the enlargement of the orbit within such systems are to revolve, either in respect to the dimensions of a single state or to the consolidation of several smaller states into one great confederacy. The latter of that which immediately concerns the object under considerations, it will, however, be of use to examine the principle and its application to a single state, which shall be attended to in another place. The utility of a confederacy as well to suppress faction and to guard the internal tranquility of states as to increase their external force and security is in reality not a new idea. It has been practiced upon in different countries and ages and has received the sanction of the most approved writers on the subject of politics. The opponents of the plan proposed have, with great assiduity, cited and circulated the observations of Montesquieu on the necessity of a contracted territory for a republican government, but they seem not to have been apprised of the sentiments of the great man expressed in other parts of his work, nor to have adverted to the consequences of the principle to which they subscribe with such ready acquiescence. When Montesquieu recommends a small extent for republics, the standards he had in view were of dimensions far short of the limits of almost every one of these states. Neither Virginia, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New York, North Carolina, nor Georgia can by any means be compared with the models from which he reasoned and to which the terms of his description apply. And if we therefore take his ideas on this point as a criterion of truth, we shall have been driven to the alternative either of taking refuge at one of the arms of monarchy or of splitting ourselves into an infinity of little, jealous, clashing, tumultuous commonwealths, the wretched nurseries of unceasing discord, and the miserable objects of universal pity or contempt. Some of the writers who have come forward on the other side of the question seem to have been aware of the dilemma and have been bold enough to hint at a division of the larger states as a desirable thing. Such an infatuated policy, such a desperate expedient, mighty by the multiplication of petty offenses, answer the views of men who possess not qualifications to extend their influences beyond the narrow circles of personal intrigue, but it could never promote the greatness or happiness of the people of America. Referring the examination of the principle itself to another place, it has been already mentioned. It will be sufficient to remark here that, in the sense of the author who has been most emphatically quoted upon the occasion, it would only dictate a reduction of the size of the more considerable members of the Union, but would not mitigate against their being all comprehended in one confederate government. And this is the true question in the discussion of which we are presently interested. So far are the suggestions of Montague from the standing of the opposition to a general union of the states, that he explicitly treats of a confederate republic as an expedient for extending the sphere of popular government and reconciling the advantages of a monarchy with those of republicanism. It is very probable, says he, that mankind would have been obligated at length to live constantly under the government of a single person had they not contrived a kind of constitution that has all of the internal advantages of a republican, together with the external forces of a monarchical government. I mean, a confederate republic. This form of government is a convention by which several smaller states agree to become members of a larger one, which they intend to form. It is a kind of assemblage of societies that constitute a new one, capable of increasing by means of new associations till they arrive to such a degree of power as to be able to provide for the security of the united body. A republic of this kind, able to withstand an external force, may support itself without any internal corruptions. The form of this society prevents all manners of inconveniences. If a single member should attempt to usurp the supreme authority, he could not be supposed to have an equal authority and credit in all the Confederate states. Were he to have such too great of influence over one, this would alarm the rest. Were he to subdue a part that which would still remain free, might oppose him with forces independent of those which he has usurped, and overpower him before he could be settled into his usurpation. Should a popular insurrection happen in one of those Confederate states, the others are able to quell it. Should abuses creep into one part, they are reformed by those that remain sound. The state may be destroyed on one side, not on the other. The Confederacy may be dissolved, and the Confederates preserve their sovereignty. As this government is composed of small republics, it enjoys the internal happiness of each, and with each respect to its external situation, it is possessed by means of the association of all the advantages of large monarchies. I have thought it proper to quote at length these interesting passages because they contain a luminous abridgment to the principal arguments in favor of the Union and must effectually remove the false impressions which is a misapplication of other parts of the work. was calculated to make. They have, at the same time, an intimate connection with the more immediate design of this paper, which is to illustrate the tendency of the Union to repress domestic faction and insurrection. A distinction more subtle than accurate has been raised between a confederacy and a consolidation of the states. The essential characteristic of the first is said to be the restriction of its authority to the members of their collective capacities without reaching to the individuals of whom they are composed. It is contended that the National Council ought to have no concern with any object of internal administration. An exact equality of suffrage between the members has also been insisted upon as a leading feature of a Confederate government. These positions are, in the main, arbitrary. They are supported neither by principle nor precedent. It has indeed happened that governments of this kind have generally operated in the manner which the distinction taken notice of supposes to be inherent in their nature, but there have been in most of them extensive exceptions to the practice which serve to prove, as far as example will go, that there is no absolute rule on the subject. And it will be clearly shown in the course of this investigation that as far as the principle contended for has prevailed, it has been the cause of incurable disorder and imbecility in the government. The definition of a Confederate republic seems to simply be an assemblage of societies or an association of two or more states into one state. The extent, modification, and objects of the federal government are mere matters of discretion, so long as the separate organization of the members be not abolished, so long as it exists by a constitutional necessity for local purposes, though it should be in perfect subordination to the general authority of the Union, it would still be in fact and in theory an association of states or a confederacy. The proposed Constitution, so far from implying an abolition of the state governments, makes them constituent parts of the national sovereignty by allowing them a direct representation in the Senate, and leaves in their possession certain exclusive and very important portions of sovereign power. This fully corresponds in every rational import of the terms with the idea of a federal government. Hey, Cool Frog, what's up, brother? Good to see you. Good to see you. Good vibes. Good vibes. Don't worry, I'm not going very long tonight. I'm actually going to be finishing up here very shortly. In the Lycerian Confederacy, which consisted of 23 cities or republics, the largest were entitled to 3 votes in the Common Council, those of the middle class to 2, and the smallest to 1. The Common Council had the appointment of all judges and magistrates in the respective cities. This was certainly the most delicate species of interference in their internal administration. For if there be anything that seems exclusively appropriated to the local jurisdiction, it is the appointment of their own officers. Yet Montesquieu, speaking of this association, says, "Were I to give a model of an excellent Confederate republic, it would be that of Lycia." Thus we perceive that the distinctions insisted upon were not within the contemplation of this enlightened civilian, and we shall be led to conclude that they are the novel refinements of an erroneous theory. So this guy, Montague, wanted to dictate how our government should be. Good thing he didn't. Look where we are now. Isn't it a wonderful day? Anyhow, with that, I've still got a couple of minutes. I'll play my closing, my outro. Again, for those that are here hanging out, I'll have a haul on my channel on Sunday. We'll be doing a 9:30 show, and we're going to be talking about goats, greatest of all time. No, we will be talking about goats. It'll be a good show, and I'm sure there's other streams that are probably kicking up or about to kick up right now. I don't know, because I might jump in and just hang back, dance a little dance, make a little love, get down tonight. I don't know. I'll probably be hanging out, just jumping around and seeing what really draws my interest, getting caught up on the news and all that good kind of stuff. But yeah, it should be a blast tonight. And I think tomorrow, Cool Frog, or is it tonight? Cool Frog actually has a show coming on. Should be interesting. Should be a blast. It should be a good time. Everybody check it out. I'm so out of the loop. I spent a good portion of the afternoon today doing a bunch of work on all the pictures and everything, getting those uploaded and downloaded and put into something cohesive. So maybe tomorrow during the day I'll be able to make that happen. We'll see. We shall see. But tonight is on you guys. Have a wonderful one, and thanks for coming by, and appreciate it. Thank y'all. And with that, damn, I'm just gonna fly on out of here like a wild animal. Just kidding. Anyhow, everybody have a wonderful night. Peace.
Exótica.